Hi, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of AFH's Mental Health U series. My name is Sara Keane, and I am the Assistant Director for Athletes for Hope University. I was formerly a student athlete at West Virginia University, where I played women's soccer, and I'm super excited to host this episode about women's mental health in celebration of Women's History Month. I'll now turn it over to our two panelists to introduce themselves. Rosie, would you like to start?
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Rosie Deegan. I'm a senior and I play for Davidson women's basketball team, originally from Australia.
And I'm Helen. I'm also a senior at Georgetown on the women's rowing team, and I've been an intern at Athletes for Hope for 2 years now. So it's cool to get to know more athletes.
Great. Thank you both. So we'll kick it off. Since we're here celebrating Women's History Month, I'd love to hear about a sport or mental health hero who really inspires you, especially in how they've addressed women's mental health in athletics. Does anyone come to mind in that sense?
I think for me, I know it's not great to go with personal anecdotes, but I think like when you're around sport a lot, like sometimes the best heroes you have are the people in your team and the people you surround yourself with. So for me, I was a freshman and I had a senior who kind of lost her career to concussions, and the way she was able to deal with that injury and the mental health problems that came with losing your sport and that kind of loss of the identity, and the way she was still able to be a good teammate, and she kind of battled through her own mental health and was really public with that and spoke about it with the team. I think that was something that I always looked up to because I was pretty impressionable coming in as a freshman, and that kind of set how to be a leader, but also how to deal with mental health in kind of like a student athlete realm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said you don't like bringing up the personal anecdotes, but I think personally, I would agree with you. Like, to me, that's most profound. I had teammates like that at West Virginia who, they were the biggest leaders on the team, and maybe they were hurt or didn't play so much, but they were the ones that really led me into the athlete I became at West Virginia. So I'm with you on that totally.
Yeah, I would second that. I think it's a lot of teammates come to mind. Just there's so many stories I could go with that, but someone who I noticed go above and beyond very humbly was one of my former teammates. She graduated 2 years ago, Ruth Axton. Also worked for Athletes for Hope, but she brought a lot of mental health resources and programming to campus, and we all kind of didn't really know about the behind the scenes work that she was doing until we started seeing her name attached to things. And she was very locked in on checking in on everyone, but we all kind of thought we had this like unique individual relationship with her, and she seemed to have that special relationship with almost everyone. So it was really empowering, or it was special to feel like one of hers and to know that she was doing this for so many. So when you connected the dots about teammates like that who were able to be there at a high capacity for so many people and not really ask for credit, I think those are some of the people I try to learn from and have grown from. I really have a lot of respect for the way they're able to carry themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, emulating them and being that type of teammate, I think is so important for the younger athletes. You two being seniors, that you taking on those roles is you're going to build that relationship with somebody younger, and they're going to grow up and say they looked up to you two. And I think that's super cool. Juggling academic, sports, and a personal life is obviously super tough when it comes to playing a sport in college. Do you have any thoughts on how we can give our female athletes better support in that sense, keeping mental health front and center of all of that? I know in the last handful of years, student athlete mental health in general has become a much bigger topic, more so than when I was in college. So I'm wondering if you've seen anything or if you feel any certain type of way about the support that we can continue to give for our female student athletes.
I mean, I can agree that the conversation gaining momentum and continuing to build and grow in so many shapes, forms, and facets is empowering in itself. But I do think the female-specific identity of being an athlete comes with like a pretty great deal of imposter syndrome, especially at like the high-performing universities where you're in a classroom. Maybe there's some imposter syndrome given elements of like thinking you match up to other students, and then also in an athletic sense. So I think being able to identify and consistently remind people of like what's got them to this moment they're in and the greater picture helps to provide reassure like context. We often take for granted all of the work we've done to put ourselves in these positions to be high performing in the classroom and on a court or rowing in a boat, any way, shape, or form. And it's overlooked because I think characteristically female athletes are incredibly humble and we don't really ask for a ton of credit or get a lot of credit, especially on co-ed teams. So I think having that reassurance, whether it's from a department, from programming, or specific like acknowledgement of the demands that come with this workload and the toll on the mental health, I think is important to make that connection.
Yeah, just to kind of go off that as well, like for me, I think it's really important as well as female athletes to give ourselves grace, as well as having programs that give grace. Because I think with performance and the pressure of performance, like to become an athlete, stereotypically, you're probably type A, you probably invested a lot of time in your sport, and with that comes an expectation. And so with those expectations, there comes a pressure, and I think that pressure contributes to a lot of like mental health issues in athletes because there's this pressure to perform in the classroom, there's this pressure to perform on the court, on the board, or exactly in your sport. And I think grace is like a very important thing that coaches need to have, that departments need to have, that teachers need to have when dealing with these type of students, and definitely female students, because I think they don't give themselves grace. So if you're like in this kind of echo chamber of like, you need to be perfect, that's a very high bar to kind of achieve. And I think a lot of us fall short, and I think that really affects mental health. So I think having grace in programs and coaches is just really important for mental health.
I think both of you hit the nail on the head there. My coach from West Virginia always used to say pressure is a privilege. And while I do agree to an extent, obviously what we do as student athletes is a privilege. We do need to give ourselves, a breather every once in a while. And the word grace, I think, fits perfectly in that. Like, we need to give ourselves grace to get our mental health in order. I understand, and I'm sure you both understand, the privilege that we had, playing a Division I sport or have playing a Division I sport, but that doesn't mean that, you should feel bad doing it. You should feel proud to be able to do it. So I think you guys nailed that. And to lead into our next question, which we touched on a little bit, we know that there are a lot of expectations and stereotypes for female student athletes compared to men. You can talk about Serena getting angry on a court and yelling at a ref, and when she does it, she's out of hand. But if Nadal does it, he's just competitive. So that can affect mental health. Absolutely. How do you think we can shake things up and create more supportive environments for our female athletes?
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And you had that in March Madness with women's basketball last year with Angel Reese, Angel Reese simply trash talking, which everybody knows who watches basketball, trash talk is a massive thing. But because she's a woman doing it on the biggest stage, it was somehow a race thing and also a controversy thing that women shouldn't be speaking this way. She was speaking out of tongue and stuff like that. And I think as women, when we watch that, we don't see that. We see a competitive young woman on the highest and biggest stage, like winning a national championship and leading her team, arguably. So I just think there's a lot of like public perception that needs to be changed, and that's kind of out of our control. But there's also within athletics, I think there's a way it's represented differently, whether it's within our social media. Like, how many clips are there of men like screaming at other men, like after they dunk the ball on someone, and it's broadcast everywhere and everyone's like, oh, that's amazing. But if they were to do that with like a woman's clip, she's arrogant. So
or she's disrespectful, right? Yeah.
So I just think and I think that also is a society thing, but I think in sport and in like these institutions we have and the platform we have, there's an opportunity for us to encourage it and normalize it. Because if we as a platform, as we as athletes and our SIDs and our coaches are being like, no, this is competitive women's sport. This is exactly what you want. This is women performing at the highest level. Like, they should not be held to a different standard as men. If we're not doing that, then it kind of doesn't excuse the public to do so. But if on both forums, we're both being like, oh, that's disrespectful, or we're not proud of women acting this way, I think that's where you kind of get into troubled water with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was really eloquently said. I do agree. I think like athletic department social media is a tool. Social media is all about framing a moment in time, and I think having a department back up both genders in terms of like how they frame the same moment of like slam dunking a basketball, and like or aggression on the court, competitiveness, how we frame that and take pride in our athletes on the at the highest level of their competition and competing fiercely, I think reinforces the narrative we want and can help like support and provide backup that when there is maybe controversy or negative feedback that you do have a department behind you. So I think the tangible aspect of that is really important.
Mm-hmm.
I do think you mentioned expectation or stereotype more like broadly connected to mental health. Something I've been conscious of over the past few years and have come to terms with and made a lot more peace with recently is the dilemma of body image in terms
Mm-hmm.
of being a female athlete. Whereas in high school, I was so conscious of, okay, well, I want to like, this is what the metric of beauty looks like and staying lean. And my coach would joke that I was kind of like string beanie because I was a bit anxious to like put on more muscle. And then in college, with the my first year of college was the pandemic and everyone's isolated. My outlet was working out, and I did put on a whole lot more muscle, and I started to see progress, and I took a lot of pride in gaining momentum in that way. And then I came back into um, everyone being together on campus, and I was pretty consistent with that and more comfortable in myself. So balancing what feeling or looking and feeling beautiful is outside of athletics versus like my body is incredibly powerful and is able to do these crazy cool things on a daily basis, and that beauty is strength. And that was a hard bridge to gap for me, and that like took a toll on my own mental health of, okay, I'm putting on more weight in a good way, and I'm becoming more successful because of this, and this is a tool, and this is what's making me stronger and a better athlete.
Yeah.
So I think that was challenging in terms of a more like specific mental health connection. Personally, I know a lot of female athletes go through this, especially with rowing being broken up by weight categories at some schools. um, it's something constantly on our minds. Like, how can it not be if that's
Yeah,
what we talk about every
absolutely.
other woman, you know?
No, that's really well said. And, as somebody who no longer plays a competitive sport, but was string beanie in my playing days, I get what you're saying. And it's tough, looking back now, you look at I look at pictures from when I was in college and I was like, wow, I put on a lot of weight, but it's like, did I like, yes, I did, but I was so incredibly thin in college and you burn so many calories every day. You can eat whatever you want. And the real life isn't like that. You know what I mean? You're never going to do the same type of workouts that you did in college. And it took me a really long time for that to kind of click that I'm not running 120s every other day. I mean, I go to the gym, but I'm doing a normal workout that, I'm not sprinting anymore. What do I need to sprint for? And that's okay. Like I am now at the point, Helen, kind of like you said, where I am more confident and comfortable with how I look now, even though it's very different than what it looked like 10 years ago. And that's okay. It just took a while for me to get there. So I really like that you hit on that. But to stay on the social media theme, it can be a blessing and a curse, especially for student athletes or athletes in general. You're under a microscope. How do you think you can help our female athletes handle the pressure and scrutiny they face online while staying mentally strong? Because when I was in school, Snapchat didn't exist. Twitter barely existed. Instagram was like in its infancy. So yeah, we had it, but no one was really bullying or building anyone up. It was kind of just there and everyone was just on it all willy-nilly. So how do you guys feel about social media now and how it impacts athletes in general, but specifically female athletes?
There's a couple different directions I could speak to this. But yeah, I don't my sport specifically, we don't get a ton of scrutiny. It's just we're not a spectator sport. We kind of just do it
Fair
on our own a little bit. So in a way, it's been like when I look at it through a lens of like my team in sport, it's been a really prideful lens of I get to the opportunity to like share something that most people are not quite familiar with, or like what this looks like and like the success we achieve and reposting like when we win something or what my mornings look like. I get to see a sunrise almost every day. So that in that sense, it's been really empowering to be able to share what it means to like do my sport on a daily basis and why I love it so much, and like emphasize that aspect of my identity that's not tangible to most. But outside of my sport, because I know that's not the reality for most female athletes, especially with what this month is, March Madness, I think following my school's basketball team, the Georgetown women, they made it to the Big East finals for the first time in history, which was huge. And it was one of my favorite moments. Like one of my favorite moments being a female athlete at this school was watching the game and then seeing it end and then opening Instagram and seeing like almost everyone I had known being like, they've made history. This is incredible. Like men and women alike. And then seeing people like be like, I'm gonna watch at this restaurant. I'm gonna watch here, and formulating watch parties. And it was really cool to see that momentum. But other than that, I think when it can be negative in the sense of like the attention can be fleeting and recognition can be fleeting, and acknowledging something for a brief moment on social media doesn't really validate or give the credit that's due necessarily. So I think if all we're really able to like promote and get across an athletic department is social media validation and not the funding that comes with it or the support within a department and the support within resources and programming, then it's not really the most effective tool if that's the only supplemental thing that's been being done. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, like, speaking on the March Madness thing, and obviously where basketball is more of a spectator sport, so it kind of leans itself to more criticism or more positivity. It's a bit of a toss of the coin whether you win or lose, really, which way that's going to go. I mean, myself, my team had a history making season. We broke a lot of records, but we also had a lot of failings. We had canceled our season. And so with like the successes and the peaks and troughs in the season come this like either you feel like everyone's with you, everyone's supporting you. Like when we beat Duke and we were getting ranked, like everyone was with us. And then with our injuries, social media allows people a platform to directly contact players, to directly comment on things, to have their own opinions. There's forums on like Google, everything. There's a commentary always. So I think it's really tough because with social media, there's a great side and there's also a very negative side where athletes and female athletes are easily accessible to the public and sometimes people who don't know much about the sport or if anything. So I think, and that's what you see a lot with March Madness, if you just go through the comment section of a team that's lost, it's horrific the things that people can say because there's anonymity and social media lacks accountability and people's bettings on it. And there's so many things riding on it that's outside of a player or student athlete's control that you're saying these things to an 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old kid.
Yes.
So I think social media is great for what it's done for the sport in allowing fans to get to know their players on a more intimate level with these skits and TikToks and stuff like that. But I also think with social media comes accessibility to athletes. And more so than me missing a three in a crowd member yelling at me or the student section yelling at me, right? That's always been around sport. It's always
right.
Been-
And that's normal, if you will, and it's expected. But when you have the keyboard warriors out there that are telling you like, it's a middle-aged man saying he could make a three, but he couldn't even get down the court if he wanted to.
Right.
So,
It's interesting as well. And like, I've got like admittedly like a very terrible shot technique. Like I have, it's disgusting and it deserves all the criticism it gets. But if we ever play on like CBS or anything like live on like national television, you best believe like all the comments on there are like, "Ooh, that girl's shot's disgusting," which is like I find like very, very funny because it is. But like for some people, like if the criticism's like, oh, like there's like a girl playing for Iowa State right now who consistently gets body shamed, and she's dropping 40 points in March Madness.
Incredible, yeah. And she's a freshman.
And she's a freshman, right? So I think there's and with women and social media comes exactly the same problem of like body shaming comes in.
Yeah.
Right. And you see it a little bit, like you can see it with Zion Williamson in the NBA, like he gets body shamed.
Yes.
But like with women, it's almost consistently like Haley Van Lint's getting body shamed. Like if there's even a remote change in a woman's body and it's publicized, people will make comments on social media.
Yeah, they latch on to it, right?
And so I don't know. I think there's many positives, and support for women's basketball has greatly increased because of social media, like the clips and showing their talent and all these like women's sports and women being successful. But there's also the problems that we have in society have now entered our sport and our collegiate like athletics, because you're allowing society and people in society to comment and like make comments on student athletes that they wouldn't usually make in person, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit it. One of your first comments, Rosie, was regarding accountability on social media. And I agree that it lacks accountability. And I don't know that there's a right answer, because, there's not going to be somebody like Mr. Twitter sitting there saying, oh, you can't tweet that. Like, I understand there are guidelines and everything, but there's always going to be those people that just want to say something mean. And, and unless it's mean enough, they're not going to get their account's not going to be suspended or anything like that. They're just going to keep doing it. So I do think accountability on that end is very, very important.
And to that point, I think, well, similarly especially with a lot of like these female teams that are gaining a lot of public attention, you notice in the early stages, players had to be a bit more vulnerable and let the audience get to know them to attract viewership and to gain that following. So then once you have that like personal connection with a team, you feel justified to make comments, especially with regards to like performance, what's changed body wise, and especially with uniforms that most often don't always fit women correctly. It's an incredibly damaging mix of uniforms that don't fit women right, because most departments don't really invest in that and making sure that these pieces are to the highest level performance of what the woman needs. And then you have this platform that is built on people who believe they are justified in their relationship to these female athletes and being able to say what they want and make the comments they feel they're able to.
No, that's really well said. I think that you're spot on, with the uniforms and stuff too. Soccer and basketball, I feel like those uniforms are, but crew, I mean, that's a singlet essentially.
Yeah.
Same with, women's volleyball, track and field. These are things that I think that athletic departments and just athletics in general don't really consider. That's something that could be scarring for female athletes. And, it may seem so little to somebody who maybe doesn't have body image issues or concerns with that, but a lot of people do, men and women, like you said, Rosie, and it's a real shame that that's something that athletic departments and like I said, athletics in general, just I feel like we haven't really gotten there yet with that sort of stuff. But to move on, considering all the factors like race, ethnicity, and sexual orientation and economic background, how does being a female athlete intersect with these identities when it comes to mental health?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question itself, because in that you have a lot of different like intersections, right, of minorities. I think a really good thing that every female has, no matter their race or sexual orientation, is they have experienced discrimination because of something they cannot control. So I think there is overlap there, and particularly in women's sport, you kind of seen that a lot. So I think now are the issues exactly the same? Absolutely not. But things out of like a female's control can be held against them and have been held against them throughout sport and throughout history. So as almost a minority in that aspect, particularly in sport. I think there is an intersection there, and then how that affects your mental health, right? When it's something that you can't control, and you're still getting maybe not the same attention, maybe not the same credit, treated differently. Like same thing, like body shame, because like women are seen differently in society because they're allowed to be treated differently to their counterparts of males. Like these things are out of females' controls, and the mental health burdens that they have is something that's also out of their controls, and they have to deal with that. And that is stuff like body image, and that is stuff like that we've just spoken about. And I think that is specific to women's problems because of the way society's been formed.
Yeah. Well, very, very well said.
Yeah. I think to second that, especially on a team where there's a co-ed male counterpart, it's pretty confronting what the differences feel like. It's in your face. And that's just kind of the way things are at a time. So there is some like the burden of like not justifying or not just but tying your worth and your team's value to that difference between programs, I think is something challenging and to learn from. And you notice like when the underclassmen come in for the first time, they're like, why is this all different? And you kind of see like the frustration versus like upperclassmen who have been like kind of learned everything we have is everything we need, and we can still perform at a really high standard. So making peace with some of the things that like institutionally we can't always change, but also finding a way to continue to like challenge and push those boundaries a bit in terms of like my campus has been working a lot. Like a lot of the female athletes have come together creating a like coalition in which we've educated ourselves on our rights by Title IX and done a lot of education and spreading that around the department. So we're able to hold our departments accountable and check in on each other and be like a system of support of, is this normal? Does this feel normal? Stuff like that. So I think the things that we can't change in the moment, a lot of people have found ways to get the ball moving a little bit and find more comfort with making long-term progress. So those who come into the program behind you don't feel that same initial frustration. I think that I can feel myself getting frustrated about certain things within like the athletic department between men's and women's teams, and that difference that Rosie also spoke to, and that can take a toll on your mental health, like constantly being frustrated and angry and associating with that with your worth as an athlete at school. Then the imposter syndrome starts to build in. So finding a way to separate those things, but also not normalize it, I think is challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. So to switch gears a little bit regarding athlete mental health and community service, you both are a part of our AFHU program where you spend time in your communities giving back. How do you think giving back to others has positively affected your mental health?
I was out for a good season. I had some health conditions going on, and I've also not like gone through periods where I've been in a comeback season, I would say. Every team really only has one or two captains. There's only that one official leadership position, and it's not everyone can be the superstar on a team. So finding a way to have purpose in my identity and still feel like I am a leader in doing something with the role that comes with being an athlete has been really empowering for me, and being able to give back, but through an outlet of this platform I have for a limited time period. Like I'll never have this role or title again. And still finding a way to compel leadership in that way. That's not the best sentence or more articulate, but it's given me more of a purpose with just than being solely an athlete. It's made my athletic career multidimensional, which has been really helpful in terms of aiding my mental health through injuries or through rough periods in a season. It's really given me something consistent to lean on as I'm still doing everything right as an athlete. I'm doing everything I can, and I'm using my platform for something better, and I'm still contributing to my team and community.
No, I love that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think for me, just going off that, it's really correct as in athletes put a lot of worth on their performance and being an athlete. And I think particularly being a student athlete, it becomes a huge part of your identity in the college, within your friendship groups, and within your team. And with injuries or comebacks or like a lack of identity in that space can really affect mental health. But I think one of the biggest things for me was the ability to give back and realize how lucky we are to be in this position, and also the platform we have to make change. I think sometimes as a female athlete, we kind of minimize our role and our impact or the effect that we have on people. And I definitely did that throughout my years of college. And I was injured a little bit, but I was playing a lot, and we had a strong fan base, but I never thought I was affecting or being a role model to these kids coming to our games. Just because you don't really think about that. You go, you shoot a basketball, you put it in the net. My job here is done. We win, we lose. But it was only my senior year, and when I tore my ACL, when I started getting like notes and like gifts from like little kids and their parents and these things saying like about role modeling, is where I started talking to my team about it. Like, we don't know the effect we could have on one individual's lives, and I never knew the effect I could because I was just playing basketball.
Right.
And
yep.
The way we interact with one kid can change their trajectory. It can make them want to play basketball, want to be involved in sport, or have like a female role model in sport, which was so rare when we were growing up. So I think for me, that was a big thing. And that's not even giving back to your community by like stepping outside. That's playing your sport is doing that. And then I think with Athletes for Hope, I think that's just giving another avenue to give back and interact with these people and kind of humanize yourself within these communities and be like, I'm a person, I can play my sport, I can do well in my sport, but I'm a person and I want to build these connections with you. I want to be a role model with you. I want to be a mentor. I want to contribute to my community because I'm bigger than the sport that you know me by.
Right. No, I think both of you really nailed that. I know for me, when I was at school, I didn't do a whole lot of community service, but I did some I was a goalkeeper, so I did some individual goalkeeper training, and I didn't really acknowledge or understand kind of what you said, Rosie, that I was making a difference, because I just thought, well, I'm here, may as well do some coaching. These young athletes come and support us at our games. I'd love to try to help the next generation of athletes, but you never really totally understand it until when I graduated. One of the girls' moms was, like you said about getting gifts and notes, was just like, you made such a difference in her life. And I was like, I didn't expect that. I certainly didn't expect it or acknowledge it when it was happening. But you really, now I'm following her college career, and it's really fun to see that and have that relationship. It's not like anything that might span my entire life or her. And she might not even remember me at this point. She's a senior in college, but I remember the first time I trained her name was Jordan. She was so excited because I was the goalkeeper for West Virginia women's soccer. And I'm like, you think, well, football's the big school at West Virginia, or men's basketball. Like, who really cares about women's soccer? But then you kind of acknowledge, oh, people do care. And that is really, it's humbling, but it also gives you a little boost too. But lastly, if you could give one piece of advice to young female athletes about taking care of their mental health, what would that be?
I think for me, it's talking about it and having a forum to talk about it. I think as female athletes, we're always expected to be strong. And I think there's strength in vulnerability. And Absolutely. It took me 4 years of college probably to like figure that out, that it's okay to kind of have these ups and downs. It's okay not to be perfect, because I think in a lot of facets of our life, we try to be. And so I think having that vulnerability and that ability to talk is just so important, and having that forum, whether that is, speaking to someone outside of your sport or being able to be actually open with your team. I think that's so important moving forward with your mental health and making sure you're taking care of your mental health. Because I think sometimes mental health takes a back burner to support academics. So I think prioritizing that and also that vulnerability.
Yeah, I find this question interesting because I first tried to revisit myself in middle school and like think about who I was. I famously had a tall blonde girl take every physical exam for me. I would sit in the PE locker room. I would refuse to run the mile. I wouldn't even think about a push-up. You couldn't pay me to do anything. And a lot of my confidence came from trying new sports, but I also failed at most of them. And I just wasn't coordinated, and it wasn't working, and it wasn't clicking. And then I found something that just required me to really work hard. And I took a lot of pride in the work ethic that came with my sport. So part of it is, I think, especially when we're so easily able to easily compare each other or ourselves to one another, the work you put in justifies your spot on a team. Yep. The work you put in makes you valid for being in the space. Occupy the space you want to wholeheartedly. If you want to be there, you're there. Work hard, you're there. So I think that sense of worth took me a long time to make peace with and come to and understand and really believe in. But I think, to Rosie's point, once we start finding our rhythm and our what it means to actually take care of our mental health, I've told myself for a year or two now, motto's been the longest relationship and the only relationship you're going to have for your whole life is with yourself, and it deserves to be honest, happy, loving, and healthy. So whatever you can do in the little moments to facilitate that and invest in that, you are worth investing in, whether that means going to talk to a coach, a teammate, a friend, and finding different avenues of support. The tiny moments you maybe forget, and the little parts of the day, or the big steps forward into seeking help professionally, that's investing in yourself, and it does really matter in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you both are great examples of female athletes for, these younger athletes to look up to. And I am so happy that you were both able to join us tonight and do this and kind of give your view on athlete mental health, but specifically in female athletes. I just want to thank you again. You were both fantastic tonight, and we are excited to show everyone, what the great work that you're all doing. So yeah, thank you very much.